have a good excuse as to why I wasn't here for the past 3 weeks. And this one I think all of you can relate to. I didn't have iPhone storage. I don't have a camera, I didn't have iPhone storage, and I started recording a video and they kept saying I don't have iPhone storage. I deleted 3 apps, 3 whole apps. And it said, no, you still don't have iPhone storage. So then I moved about 4,000 of my pictures and videos onto my laptop, deleted them off of my phone, and now I have storage. So hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope everyone's been doing well. So am I late for the mid-year freakout tag? Yes I am, which is why I'm not doing the mid-year freakout tag. I'm doing my favorite books of the year so far, which I've read like 76 books as of today, or maybe today was 77th book of the year. And so this is all of my favorite books that I read this year. These are the books I rated a 5 out of 5. I think they're perfect. They don't need anything else. If you disagree, you don't have taste. I'm joking. You don't have good taste. I'm joking again. Anyways, here's the books that I really enjoyed this year. This video is going to be divided into 2 sections. The first section is going to deal with all of the romances that I've rated 5 out of 5. Almost 6. If I could, I would. And the next part is about the fantasies that I've rated 5 out of 5, which aren't many because I did not read that much fantasy this year, sadly, because I've had exams literally every month since November. I was exhausted by December, but I had to keep going and I was fully burnt out. And when I'm burnt out, I usually just read romances instead of fantasy because it's just easier to follow. My brain doesn't need to actively think and doesn't have to conjure up like pictures of fantasy worlds and then add on to the world building that builds a picture. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it does. But yeah, let's get on to the romances that I rated 5 out of 5. The first romance book that I rated a 5 out of 5 was The Romance Book Club. Absolutely love this book. This book is a second chance marriage in trouble and a sports romance, but the sports thing isn't too huge. It's not too centered on the sports, and to be honest, sports wasn't really talked about that much, other than the fact that Gavin was a football and is a football like superstar. After the mega hit that lands them their like huge win, and I think this is Dallas. I'm not sure what, Nashville, sorry. Nashville, right. So Nashville gets like a huge hit and they win the championships or something like that. And Gavin and Thea are very excited. They celebrate, the celebration goes wrong, which you guys will read about. And so she says, you know what, I think we should get a divorce because I don't think this is working out. And he is wrecked at the idea of divorcing the love of his life. So we find him in the beginning of the book, in the first chapter, drowning his sorrows in a bottle of alcohol in a hotel room. And that is when his teammates walk in, they're like, all right, we have to take him to it. And everyone's talking about taking him to this thing, and he's like, where are you guys taking me? They're like, we just have to take you to someplace. It's very important, sober up, we're going someplace very important and special and secret. And so they go down to the basement of one of the baseball team members, and in the basement there's a bunch of athletes, and what is in the hands of these athletes? It's romance books. And then he gets recruited to the secret romance like book club, and the first rule of the book club is that you don't talk about the book club outside of the book club. And basically in this book we find these huge athletes who are like these cool guys. I don't know how to explain it, like these masculine guys, and what they're doing is they're all just sitting around in a basement reading romances, learning from these romances on how to be good people in their relationships. And basically he uses a romance book and with the help of his friends, and they guide him into winning back his wife. And it is the sweetest, like cutest romance book. It made me laugh out loud so many times, but also it's just so sweet. It's also, he also has like twin daughters, so if you guys like daughters dad romances, I don't know how to explain it, like this is for you. And it's just, there's some books that I just think are perfectly written. They're perfect funny, they have the right amount of like emotional value and emotional like maturity to them, and I think this book is exactly that. Loved it so much. The next book that I was very late onto the train of was People We Meet on Vacation. And I know a lot of people hate this book, and it's like you either love this book or you hate this book. There's no in between, and I fell in the love section of it. I loved it a lot. Like I annotated it like my life depended on it. And so the reason why people don't like this book is because it does have a miscommunication trope, and like I get that was really annoying, but also it felt real in the sense that this is life. It is what it is. Like like I was reading this, and basically it follows Alex and Poppy, and they've been best friends for 10 years, and this is basically a dual timeline. So we're in the current, and then sometimes the next chapter is going to be like 9 summers ago. 8 summers ago, 7 summers ago. And every summer, basically, Alex and Poppy go on a vacation together. And that's like their thing. They go on vacations together. But 2 summers ago, something happened. And we don't know what has happened. They haven't been on a vacation together. They stopped talking and she misses him. And she's like, you know what? My life is so dull. I hate my life. I hate my job. Nothing is bringing me joy. And the only thing that can possibly bring me any joy is going on a vacation with Alex. So she texts him. She's like, you down to go to that vacation we talked about 2 years ago? And he's like, yeah. My brother's getting married. Let's go to my brother's like wedding together. And so they go on this final trip together. And in this final trip, she's like, I have to mend our relationship. And that's when we find out what happened 2 summers ago. But what I loved about this book was the fact that throughout this book, we saw their like relationship progress in the funniest but the cutest way. And it was so real. And I think that's what like I love about Emily Henry's book is the dialogue feels very real. So like the first summer when they have to carpool together to like Ohio, I think they live in. She's going to their hometown together, from university, and it's very awkward. She keeps talking over him like accidentally, and there's like awkward silences, and he's like, I don't like listening to music when we're in the car together, so they have to sit in silence. And it's so funny because that's how it is, and second summer is better, third summer is even better, and they start becoming friends, and it's so cute, and I loved it so much. And if you like best friends to lovers, 100% go into this book. And if you don't mind the miscommunication trope, I just loved it. I love summer romances. I love vacation romances. I love, books that have fun dialogue that's like easy to follow and feels natural too. Like when you're reading it, like, yeah, I can see myself speaking these words with someone, and I can see myself having this conversation with someone. And I think that's what makes this book perfect for me, is because I can see myself going through this with like friends and friendship. And I think that's one of the reasons I loved it so much, because I am going to uni. And having just graduated high school, I'm feeling what Poppy felt like a lot, where she was like navigating through her life and her friendships, and she was like, I don't know if I'm going to be friends with these people anymore. I don't know if I'm going to be friends with like Alex anymore, and that scares me, and that's me. I don't know if I'm going to be friends with my friends anymore, because distance, time differences, and everything else, and that scares me. So this just hit very close to home. Next up is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Now, I've been listening to so many people rave about this book, and I was like, it can't possibly be that good. It was very much that good. It was better than that good. I don't know why more people are not talking about Get a Life, Chloe Brown, but it's absolutely wonderful. So Chloe Brown is chronically ill, and she has a list for everything. She's very, very like set in her plan until the day she almost dies. She almost gets hit by a car, and she's shocked to her core, because she's like, I take this route to home every single day for a reason, because it's short, it's like sweet, and nothing's gonna happen. And I almost got killed because I take this route to home like every single day, and I need to switch it up. So she makes like this list of things that she has to do so that she's more fun, because she feels like she's very uptight. And who better to help her with this list of things than Red, the guy who's like the superintendent of her building, who lives right across like the floor from her. And initially they both think they hate each other, like the other hates them and then they hate each other, but after working together they realize the other one's pretty nice. And again, loved the dialogue of this, loved how realistic it was, in the sense that life is unexpected. You don't expect shit like this to hit the wall, but it was so much fun. Like they go camping and it's really funny. She sits on his motorcycle, very fun. She wants to have a drunk night out, but she hasn't gone out since she became chronically ill. Her friends kind of left her because she couldn't really leave her house because she was scared of her pain flaring up. And it's just chef's kiss. The second book is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams, and I don't know why I bought this book. It was divine intervention that I bought this book, and I've never been happier for buying a book. I will be honest, part of the reason I bought this book was because I was obsessed with the cover. Like, it has a flower shop, it's pink, it's so very cute. But it follows Annie Walker, who lives in this small town, and she is the sweetest girl. She's known as the good girl of the town, the golden girl of the town, and she hates first dates. And she's like, they're so awkward. I can never get past a first date because I never know how to act or how to be around them. So she goes to her future sister-in-law, basically the girl who's engaged to her brother, and she's like, I just don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like, I can't do first dates, and they're awkward and annoying, and I always say the wrong thing, and I hate that. So she's like, okay, you know what? I think I know the perfect guy for you. I'll let you know. So then Amelia, her sister-in-law, asks her bodyguard to be her fake date like coach. And so they fake date together, and he's like her dating tutor. And this is basically for everyone who was on Wattpad reading those like bad boy good girl romances. It's like that, but it's so much better because he's not really a bad boy. He's such a sweet guy. He was wonderful to read about. He was so in love and whipped and obsessed with her, and I loved it. And I loved the small town aspect of it. I loved that she was like a florist, and she had a flower business, and it felt like an old rom-com movie. And when I tell you that I was giggling from page 2, I mean chapter 1, first page, I have tabbed. That is how good this book was. Second tab is literally 2 pages over. I loved this book, and I just think everyone should read it because it's so genuinely sweet. And again, it has just the right amount of like funny dialogue, good banter, funny quips. They're like not awkward at all with one another, in the sense that it's not the funny when you're trying to be funny on paper, but it's not translating well. It's like the funny, like this is funny stuff. I laughed out loud. It was funny. Next up, this is the last physical romance that I read, like that I rated a 5 out of 5, and it was Addicted After All. This is like the final book of the Addicted series, like Alone, if you're looking at Lily and Lauren's plotline. And of course read this, rated it a 5 out of 5. I don't think I have to explain to you guys like what this book is, how much this means to me. I understand people don't like this series. I get that. I love this series. I love the series with everything that I am. As you guys can see, I had like, this is the most I've annotated a book in terms of like most different colors that I've annotated a book from. Each couple got their own color. Then I had like family moments, then I had funny moments, because Lily and Lauren are funny, and so is Lauren and Connor and Rose and everyone else. And you can, like, again, it looks like I was paid to annotate this book, because I annotated, I think I finished like 2 entire tabs annotating this. Read this book, I ate it up. If there's one thing that I am, it's a sucker for growth. If a character is growing throughout the book, if I see character growth from like the beginning to the end, I will rate a book higher. Like, that's just who I am. That's just what I read for. I read for a character to realize where they're lacking, to then grow. And what I love is when 2 characters grow together. And that's exactly what Lily and Lauren do. They grow together, but they're not just growing together, they're growing with 4 other people. And well, 5, 6 if you include Willow and Garrison. And I loved it. 10 out of 10. I will always forever talk about how I know Lily and Lauren in a way no one else knows Lily and Lauren. And that's just a me thing. I know Lily and Lauren, and I relate to them in a spiritual way. Like, I truly believe Lily and Lauren are for the middle child kids. Like, you know, like, this isn't for the older sisters, this isn't for the younger children, this is for the middle children. Like, you know, like, yeah, we're the forgotten breed. This is for the middle children, and I will die on that book. And the next book that I absolutely loved so very much was The Right Move by Liz Tomford. Guys, I love sports romances so much, and my favorite sports romances are always hockey romances. Like, this is the year that I just became a hockey romance girly, and I really got into hockey romance. But I love watching basketball, and I loved this basketball romance. Like, if you're a fan of NBA, would like watching like basketball, this was amazing. It's forced proximity, it's best friend's brother, and basically Indy moves into Ryan's apartment after she finds out that her long-term boyfriend for like 8 years was cheating on her, and she walks in on them, and it's very awkward, so she's not doing well. And so she moves into her best friend's twin brother's apartment, and initially he's very cold and he's like cut off from her. He's emotionally not that available to her, and she's like, all right, I have to do one thing, and that is stay out of his way. And she does that, except he starts noticing her, and he starts like noticing small things about her, like the fact that she likes iced coffee. So he always in the morning makes coffee for himself, and then he makes iced coffee and he puts it in the fridge. Like, he makes coffee and he puts it in the fridge so that when she drinks her coffee, it's cold and it's not watered down. And I don't know if that's not love. I don't know what love is, because I just think if you guys are suckers for like small details and like love interests noticing small details about each other and then like giving those like small like moments of affection of like knowing each other, then I think this book is just perfect. And I'm a sucker for small details. I'm a sucker for small like gestures. I just think they speak more than large gestures, and that's just my opinion. I just think they're perfect, and so this book was perfect for me. Next romance that I read, which if there's one romance, well, there's a lot. If I will take any moment I can. Like, if you mentioned Funny Feelings by Tara DeWitt, I will like beg you on my knees to read this rom-com, because I think it is the most perfect rom-com ever out there, like one of the most perfect rom-coms. It basically follows Farley and Mare, and Farley is this stand-up comedian, and Mare is her best friend who is also her manager, and Mare also has a deaf daughter who she's very close to. And so they have to fake date because she's going on a tour with these 3 other women, and they're very big stand-up comedians. They're big names in the game, and she's very excited, but they're like, we need publicity, and the only way we can get publicity is if you date Mare, who is a very, very, very popular screenwriter and, like, you know, producer. And he also used to be a stand-up comedian, but he stopped doing stand-up comedy when his daughter Hazel was born. And she's like, okay. And then she talks to him, and he's like, that's bullshit, because you're funny and you have good content, and me dating you should improve that. Like, you shouldn't need publicity and publicity stunts to go on a tour. And she's like, yeah, whatever, but will you date me? Will you fake date me? And he's like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And this is basically a best friends to lovers romance. It's a fake dating romance, and it's perfect because it's actually funny, but it's actually very emotional too, because there's moments where Farley has the strongest, like, imposter syndrome, where she's poking fun at, like, her insecurities, and he's like, stop it, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Like, stop poking fun at yourself and making everything into a joke. And that just hit really close to home, because whenever something horrible happens to me, whenever, like, I'm upset or I'm not well, the one thing that you can expect me to do is joke about it. Like, and this is funny. Like, the time I set up a stall for my small business, and I did like 2 days worth of baking. I poured a bunch of money into it, and the first day I didn't make any profit because, you know, I was getting the money back, like, of the cookies that I was selling. And the second day I made a bunch of profit, and I left it in my bag, and I put that bag in a classroom, and I was out and about. When I came back home, I realized my money had been stolen, and I joked about it because what else could I do? It's funny. And so Farley felt like me to me, which is why I love this book, because it just, there's just something about characters who poke fun at, like, their pain that I'm like, yeah, I get you. The second book that I absolutely was obsessed with was Out on a Limb. This is actually one of my newest 5-star books that I just read. Like, I think I read this 2 weeks ago, and I read this at 1 a.m. in the middle of a breakdown that I was having because I couldn't breathe. It's fun. I was in the mountains, and the blanket that I had was too heavy, but I couldn't sleep without the blanket because it was too cold. And I was having a breakdown where I was like crying over it. I was like, oh my God, I can't breathe. I'll read a book. And I read this book, and it was perfect. It was so funny. So it was like accidental pregnancy trope, which, if you guys don't like that, I don't know, this book might change your mind, because this book was wonderful. After one night stand, Win and Bo go their separate ways, but after some time, Win realizes she's pregnant, and then so she's like, oh shit. So she texts Bo, and she's like, can we meet? I have to tell you something. And he's actually very excited to meet her, because they don't know if she wanted to meet him again. And she goes to meet him, and then she's like, you're having a kid, I'm having a kid, we're having a kid. And he's like, okay. And then so they decide to live together, and they're living in the same house, and she's figuring it out. There's no third act breakup. If you guys like main characters that are very emotionally mature, very communicative, they talk about their problems, they don't, you know, like, make issues out of anything, they're just so sweet to each other, then definitely read this. Both of the characters were disabled, and this was basically an own voices book, which means basically the author had the same disability that Win had, which is called baby hand, if I'm right. And it is caused when your hand is underdeveloped, and Win's hand was underdeveloped, and Bo had an amputated leg. And it's just the sweetest book ever, and I cried tears during it. I read it from 1 to 4 a.m. I was just reading this book, and I was crying for 2 reasons. 1, because the blanket was too heavy, and 2, because this book was so sweet. We're moving on to the fantasy section of this video. So the first fantasy book that I gave a 5 out of 5 this year was A Far Wilder Magic. I put this off. I bought this in November, which, if you guys have seen my first ever video on this channel, which is a huge book haul and a huge unboxing, I bought this in November when I was in Canada for, like, stuff, and I did not read it for a while. Clearly, I just read this last month, and I read this last month with you guys in my reading only fantasy books for a week. But it basically follows Wes and Margaret. And Wes is this guy who keeps failing alchemy, and he wants to be an alchemist really bad. So he goes to his last resort, which is Margaret's mom, Evelyn. Except Evelyn is out of town. She doesn't know when she's gonna be back. So Margaret's like, you know what? You can stay here until Evelyn comes home, because Margaret is very lonely. And she's like, whatever. And basically it is Sunshine Grumpy, but he is Sunshine and she is Midnight Rain. That is the best way I can describe this book. Anyways, there's a magical hunt that's happening in Margaret's town, and after a lot of like going back and forth, she's like, what if we enter the hunt? You need a sharpshooter, which Margaret is, and you need an alchemist, which we can lie because you are an alchemist. So what if you failed every one of your alchemy like apprenticeships? You're an alchemist because I say you're an alchemist. And so they start working together. This has wonderful dyslexic rep. Wes is dyslexic, and it's just wonderful. This book is for the academic validation girlies. This book is for the parental validation girlies, and since I am both of them, this book spoke volumes to me. It saw right through me. It felt like The Archer, if The Archer was a cozy hug. The Archer being Taylor Swift's song, The Archer. Not many sequels were doing it for me this year, but you know what? One sequel that did do it for me, it was Defend the Dawn by Bridget Kemmerer. And Bridget Kemmerer really did follow up the first book with a book that was insanely good and equally good. And honestly, second book I kind of liked more than the first book, because this one had like pirates and this one had like more depth to it, and I loved it. I loved following Wes and Tessa through their thing. Or should I say, well, I'm not going to ruin it if you haven't read the first book. But the first book, this is basically kind of like a Robin Hood retelling, except they don't know each other behind their masks. So Wes and Tessa are two people who live in this village right next to the like palace, and not a village, I would say. They live in the kingdom, and the city is right next to the palace, and people are dying, and the only way to cure these people is to moonflower, if I was right. Yeah, moonflower. And the cure was running low. The kingdom's not doing much. The king's not doing much. Neither is the prince. And the king and the prince are like horrible people. They're like, they don't care about the people. They're very cruel. They're known as Cruel Corrick. That's the prince's name. His name is Cruel Corrick, which is very reminiscent of Horrid Henry. I don't know if that's just me, but anyways. Yeah, Cruel Corrick. And so Tessa and Wes, every night they wear masks and they go out and about. They go out and about. They distribute moonflower. And after some time, Wes disappears and Tessa gets caught. And, you know, that begins their journey, because now other things are coming to light. And again, I'm not going to ruin this for you. Second book was wonderful. It was amazing. I loved it. It was a 10 out of 10. Another book that I gave a 5 out of 5 was Twin Crowns. And again, I read this with you guys in my last video, which was reading only fantasy for a week. This is a rom-com fantasy, and I've never read a rom-com fantasy before, or at least I've never read books marketed as rom-com and fantasy. And so I loved this. I loved this so very much. It was a double, like, two main characters, two different like love stories were happening, romantic plot lines were happening, but there was a plot beyond the romantic plot, because basically it's these twins. They get separated at birth, and it's a very parent trap of them, because one of them is raised as a witch by the witches, and the other is raised in the palace where they hate witches. And then the one who is a witch goes to the palace, kidnaps her sister, sends her like non-witch sister to the land of the witches, and she takes her place without anyone knowing. And she's like, yep, right before the coronation, I will become like the crown princess, and then I will declare witches like to be legal, and we'll take our rightful place as the rulers of this land, because this land was unlawfully taken from us. And during this time, we're following both of the sisters, and it's absolutely wonderful. I loved it. It was funny. It was emotional. It was not that emotional, but the ending was a cliffhanger, and I have the second book sitting right there, and I can't wait to start reading it. You know what? I might just read that tomorrow. But yeah, absolutely wonderful. I loved it. The fourth fantasy book that I gave a 10 out of 10 or a 5 out of 5, and if I could, I'd give it a 6, was The Bridge Kingdom. I loved this book. Someone said that, okay, in my opinion, this book is very reminiscent of The Cruel Prince, in the sense that it has a woman who is very strong and smart, and she is very set on revenge, and I loved that. I loved it. All right, that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you guys liked this video. I wasn't about to make it But I was filming content for my TikTok. My hair looked okay, so I was like, alright, fine, I'll make this video as well because I'm in the mood to film. And I filmed, and I'm really happy for it. And I'm really excited for just filming and editing, so I'm really happy. I'll see you guys next week. If you like my content, please leave a like. If you want to see more of me, subscribe, leave a comment. I will be reading, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.